Hello again, everyone. This is John, the unpublished author. We're getting ready to start Christmas Story 3 of 7. I hope you enjoy listening as I read them. Um, Sorry if you can't understand me. I had a stroke when I was 8. I'm doing my best. Continue to have a Merry Christmas season. And today's story is entitled The First Snowflake. Hope you enjoy. And just a reminder, I did write these, and these are originals. Thank you. First snowflake. Jenny, come quick, look outside the window. Jenny's grandfather shouted from the great room. What is it, Pawpaw? Jenny came screeching in to meet him. Just look, baby girl, it's the first snowflake of the year. Jenny jumped up to catch a glimpse of the many snowflakes that fell out onto the old man's porch. Wow, the first snow ever, Grandpa? Little Jenny asked her grandpa. Of course not, sweetie. The first snowflake of the year, but not the first one ever. The disheveled man peeked through the drapes. Hey, young lady, that reminds me of a story. Would you like to hear it? He gently inquired to his granddaughter. What kind of story, Papa? The tiny 9-year-old replied. Well, it's not really a story. It's more of the truthful type of tale. Would you care to listen? He asked her again. I guess, Papa. Jenny then was invited up to the old man's lap. Okay, did your dad ever teach you about Jesus' birthday? He asked his granddaughter. Yep, it's on Christmas Day, she confidently told her grandfather. Well then, you should know that Jesus was born to Mary and Joseph, right? He then continued to tell the girl all about the Magi and the story of Bethlehem. Did your father ever tell you that it had never snowed a single day way back then? No. Well, it never did. It rained, sleeted, even hailed a few times, but it never snowed an ounce. He continued to tell the curious little girl. December 25th, Mary, who was a virgin. He was briefly interrupted by the high-pitched voice of his granddaughter. Pawpaw, what's a virgin? I'll leave that particular fact to your parents, he replied with a grin. For now, we would just say that it was possibly one of the greatest miracles that ever happened. Let's get back to the story. Baby Jesus was in fact a miracle. He was given many gifts that starting out. People gathered around his tiny bed to see what all the fuss was about. At that time, people were all about giving, sharing, and generosity. By the way, did your parents tell you that Jesus was God on earth? Jenny's grandfather asked her. Yes, Pawpaw, everyone knows that. Jenny hearkened back as she rolled her eyes. Okay, well then you should know that he did not stay a child either, right? He continued. He was a teacher. He taught the people far and wide all about God's mercy, grace, and love. All that time it never snowed. He calmly looked at Jenny. So when did it snow, Pawpaw? Jenny asked, looking back. We'll get to that part, but for now, just know that he was the greatest teacher that ever was. But he had many enemies, and he was killed because not everybody believed what he believed. Again, the 70-year-old man was interrupted. You mean Easter, right, Papa? Jenny asked. Yeah, he was crucified and left for dead. And wouldn't you know it? Beside his closest friend, people began to forget all about him, and worse, they forgot all about God, too. That's why we have a Bible on the mantle here at Grandpa's house. Your grandmother and I don't want to forget. I just hope that you don't forget about God and Jesus. He then patted his loved ones on the head. He started to tell her more about it, but was cut short by a knock at the door. Coming, let Grandpa up, please. The tired man then grabbed his walker next to his chair. Hello, Michael. I suppose you're here for Jenny. Hi, Jim. Come on, Jenny. Let's go. Michael gestured to his stepdaughter. But Papa and I were in the middle of a story, Jenny said as she stomped her feet. Now, come on. Your mom's waiting at home. Michael then rushed to Jenny, nearly knocking over Jim in the process. He picked her up and swept her away. Next time you visit me, I'll tell you the rest of the story, Jim shouted as Jenny was putting on her seatbelt. All right, love you, Papa, the 9-year-old yelled back. Jim made his way back from the porch, which was already covered in a thick white blanket of snow until his legs met the easy chair. Yeah, next time, uh, Jim muttered to himself. He then picked up an old picture of his deceased wife and pressed his lips against the glass and said, I miss you and her daughter. Hi, Mommy, Jenny said as she entered her mother's office. Hi, Jen. Mommy can't talk right now. I'm busy with a client, Mary told her daughter. Michael immediately plopped down on the overpriced couch and pushed the power button to their 70-inch television. It was a Sunday, and his favorite team was playing a long-time rival. Meanwhile, Jenny was on her way up to her room. It was there that she stayed until dinner. Mary never had the time for either her new husband or Jenny. She was a sales consultant, provided for the makeshift family, but not a very good mother. Michael wasn't at all a good stepfather, neither he couldn't hold a job, and was pretty much lazy. Mary's first husband was a hard worker. He was a bricklayer and a good father to their only daughter. Sweetie, time for dinner, Mary shouted it from downstairs. Michael didn't move a muscle as Jenny roared down the spiral staircase and into the kitchen. Pizza again? Jenny was most certainly getting tired of pizza. After all, she'd eaten it 5 nights straight. I'm sorry, Jenny, but Mommy's awfully busy this time of year, Mary replied. Here, honey, I made you a plate. Mary then handed Michael, who was still sitting on his couch in front of the boob tube, his 3 slices covered in Parmesan cheese. Thanks, babe, he answered, and his eyes then were fixated back on the game. Mom, can we sit down at the table for once? Jenny asked as she pulled out one of the 4 chairs. Mommy's busy. You can take it to your room if you like. Mary then grabbed a slice and went back to her office. Jenny stomped her little feet back to her room, moaning and groaning the whole way up. After she had eaten the last bite of her meal, she snuck quietly downstairs and over to her stepfather. What you doing? Jenny stood in front of the television. Get out of the way, please. I'm trying to watch the game, Michael said in a harsh tone. I'm bored, Jenny then replied. You're always bored. Go to your room and play with your dolls, Michael told her. Jenny hung her head and walked back to the kitchen. Mommy, do we have Papa's phone number? Jenny wanted to finish the story that she and her ailing grandfather started that afternoon. It should be on the refrigerator, Mary shouted. Don't be calling him at this hour, though, please, Mary again yelled to her daughter. Okay, but I'm bored, Jenny hollered back. Play with your dolls. Jenny heard her mother from afar. So the little girl decided just to go to sleep at around 8:30 that evening. Jenny dreamt of what it would be like to meet Jesus when he was born. As she knelt in her dreams next to the baby Christ, she gazed into the newborn king's eyes. As she did, the Magi approached her and asked Jenny one question. Do you believe in God? Before she could answer the girl, she was woken by her alarm clock. Jenny jumped out of her Barbie-shaped bed and hurried to get dressed for school. Her mother was fast asleep as usual. Just like every other morning, Jenny ate a big bowl of milk and cereal, then grabbed her backpack and headed toward the bus stop. Jenny, guess what I'm getting for Christmas? The snob of a girl said as Jenny sat down. Let me guess, a pony? The 9-year-old turned and said, Nope, I'm getting a dog. Not just any dog, but a British bulldog, the red-haired girl told Jenny. As the bus turned off her street, Jenny just rolled her eyes in response to the stuck-up girl's statement. What are you getting this year, a toad? Ha ha ha. The redhead had always made fun of Jenny. The other children laughed out loud also. I told my grandmother I wanted a dollhouse for Christmas, Jenny replied. The bus soon arrived at school. As the students went to their lockers, one of the teachers stopped Jenny in the hallway. Well, hello, miss, and how are you? The young male teacher inquired. Fine, I suppose, Jenny replied. Are you ready for Christmas? It's just 3 days away, he questioned her. Well, we got a tree the other day, Jenny told him, and then asked to be excused and then slipped it past his inquiries. All right, have a good day, Jenny, he said. Jean loved school, but not her classmates. She'd always made good grades, but as for friends, she had only a few. That was all right by her because her grandfather believed in true friendship. So as the day progressed, Jenny sat at the usual table during lunch with her three friends next to her. So what's new with you? Her longtime friend asked Jenny. Nothing much. My pawpaw is telling me a story, she replied. Oh, really? What about? Jenny paused, trying to think of a good way to explain her grandfather's story, and then answered the 10-year-old boy. Well, so far he has taught me a lot about Jesus. She was then rudely interrupted mid-sentence. Jesus, you don't believe all that nonsense, or do you? He inquired. Of course I do. When my father was around, he always taught me straight from the Bible, she said. Well, I don't believe in all that hoopla. If you ask me, it's just silly, the boy with long hair and a scornful look upon his brow replied. Jenny just took her tray to the counter after bidding the non-believers goodbye. Around 3:20 that afternoon, the last bell rang out. After putting her books into her empty locker, Jenny made a frantic dash to the buses that waited outside. This time she sat far away from the snob of a girl. Once she was home, the 9-year-old went into the house and gingerly passed her mother. Mommy, when did you stop believing in God? She asked. Mary then replied to her young daughter that in fact she had never stopped believing. Oh, then why don't we ever go to church? The girl inquired. We never go to church because of Michael, Mary told Jenny. The evening was pretty much the same as the previous night. Jenny told her mother good night and then trotted off to bed. When do I get to see Papa again, Mom? Jenny yelled to Mary. Jenny closed her little eyes and drifted to sleep. She did not need her alarm clock the following morning because it would be the first day of their Christmas vacation. Jenny loved school, but not quite enough to need a break either. She slept in until the sun's rays flashed through her window. She stretched out her arms and wiped the sleep from her tiny eyes. Mom, can you make breakfast this morning? She asked politely. Sure, I don't have any clients today until lunchtime. What do you want? Pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast, Jenny said at the table as her dear mother was picking through the nearly empty cabinets. How about grits? We hardly have anything in this house, dear. Jenny pouted a little bit and replied, I guess I'll make me a bowl of cereal. The girl of 9 then retrieved the green bowl from the middle shelf of the drawer below the sink. While she ate her cereal, she began to daydream about what it might be like if her dad hadn't left them. Then she too thought of blissful breakfasts of years gone. Jenny missed her father, as did Mary, but the truth was the married couple were not all that compatible in the first place. Mary's husband worked hard for his paycheck, which meant that he had to lay bricks 6 days a week. Saturdays were the roughest when Jenny was still a toddler. Mary and her father never saw eye to eye, but they continued to try to mend their marriage. However, they could just not compromise. They divorced shortly after Jenny's 6th birthday. For 2 days passed rather smoothly for Jenny, Michael, and Mary. Christmas Eve had come and went. Her stepdad allowed her to open her a single gift that night. So little Jenny had already seen all the neatly wrapped gifts and had the perfect one picked out. It was longer than it was wide. shallow in depth, and adorned with a bright yellow ribbon. She tore into the paper like a child of 4. As she did, the present, which was marked with Santa's signature, showed through the box. Jean was more excited to see that it was an accessory to her easy bake oven that she had gotten last Christmas. She posed with her new toy for some pictures and went straight to sleep. Her mother kept her promise of going to her parents on December 25th. Mary, it's so nice to see you, and how are you, Jenny? Merry Christmas, Dad. Where's Mom? Mary inquired. She's in the kitchen. Michael? Jim said to Mary's lazy husband. I believe I promised to finish the story to the young lady, Jim told Jenny. As Mary and Michael slinked off to greet her mother, who was halfway into the oven, Jenny's grandfather sat the 9-year-old on his lap once more. Okay, now where were you? Oh, that's right. So the people forgot about Jesus Christ and God. Jim then told Jenny that his forgetfulness by God's children continued for millennia. Not only did they stop believing in God, but by the early 20th century, folks began to be greedier. As they grew greedier, their morality and love began to fade as well, Jim told his granddaughter. So did it snow yet, Papa? Jenny inquired. Not quite there, patience, little girl. By that time, the aroma of ham and mashed potatoes was wafting about. Dinner served, dear. Jenny and grandfather then went into the dining room to eat. After Jim led the meal's prayer, they chowed down. After we do gifts, we have to leave, Mary said to Jenny. Mom, the story isn't finished yet. Can we stay a bit longer, please? Jenny asked her with her frail voice. Mary and Michael agreed to stay so that Jim could finish telling his granddaughter his story. Gifts were exchanged and words were spoken behind a crackling orange flame that Christmas. However, Jenny seemed complacent. Where she usually screamed in joy over her numerous gifts, this particular Christmas the 9-year-old had God on her mind. So she and Jim moseyed back into the easy chair. People had lost their values altogether, Jim continued, which resulted in God's sadness. After all, He created us in His image, and here we are making fools out of ourselves. We wanted more material things, more than ever, and this lust for useless technology, toys, and new things that were supposed to make our lives better. Well, then one fine November day, something happened. Did it snow, Papa? Jenny screeched in curiosity. Yep, but it wasn't that it snowed. What made that day quite eventful was the reason that it snowed. The grandfather then told Jenny that the reason that the first snowflake of all time fell from the heavens was that God got so sad he in fact began to shed tears for humanity. Jenny, it was very, very, very cold that day. God's tears didn't fall as raindrops like they had done so many times before. Instead, they instantly changed into snowflakes. Snow had never been seen by man until that late autumn morning. Because no one had seen these beautiful white crystalline flakes, they began to panic. All cars stopped dead in their tracks. People in the woods who had been hunting turkeys for Thanksgiving froze where they stood. Your grandmother and I were quite. Did you panic, Paul? Paul? Jenny inquired with her eyes on Jim's. No, we did not. Because I had an idea why it was snowing in the first place. I could sense that God was very upset. I knew in my heart that He was indeed crying. Jim then grabbed his walker and stood up. Are you about done, Dad? Mary asked her father. Yep, almost forgot. Jenny is up to us to be caring, generous, and to love all people for who they are. I just hope you never stop believing in God. As the broken family exited with a sack full of presents and cookies, Jenny looked back at her grandpa and simply said, Don't worry, Papa. I promise I will never forget. Was that the story? What was the story about, Jenny? Mary asked her daughter as they pulled out of the driveway. Well, Mommy, it was about how God is upset with us down here because we have been bad. Oh, and the snow? Jenny then sat back in her seat and peered out the window. The decorative houses seemed to get brighter that evening as they moved toward their house. Jenny was so full from supper that she could barely keep her eyes open. When they arrived at home around 10, Jenny had a light bulb go off in her tiny head. Mommy, I love you so much, but can't I see God unhappy? But I can't see God unhappy. Mary then put the gifts on the table and asked her daughter, What do you mean? Jenny then pointed to the backyard and replied, Look, it's snowing. God's crying because we are greedy. I don't want to keep my gifts. Mommy, parent can I give my presents to the needy children? Michael then interrupted the mother and daughter conversation with alongside. Really? After all we paid for your stupid dolls and your toys, you just want to give them away? Her stepfather then grabbed a cookie from the tin and scuttled over to the television. Christmas fell on a Friday that year. Jenny wound up convincing her mother that it would be a good idea to give their gifts away to the poor children. As the Saturday morning broke through her rooms, Jenny leapt from her bed and got dressed. Mary and the 9-year-old were the first to go to the hospital. On their way, Jenny sat back in the seat singing Amazing Grace. How sweet this sound. She was elated as she watched the many snowflakes fall to their resting places. The streets had not been shoveled as of yet, so her mother drove through the thick blanket of snow. They arrived at the hospital just as the clock in the car turned 9. Jenny stepped from the vehicle and asked her mother to open the trunk. Mary hit the tiny button on her keys and the trunk popped open. Immediately, Jenny started grabbing bags, big bags, small bags, and a few boxes were tucked under her arms. Come on, Mommy, let's go. Jenny raced to the front doors. Mary took her sweet time, but once inside, the doctor stopped little Jenny. Excuse me, girl, but what's the rush? Jenny opened up one of the clear bags and showed the physician a teddy bear. Can I go upstairs to the kids' floor? Doctor patted her head and said, Oh, yes, you may. So away Jenny went. By the time she left the hospital, she had given 36 gifts to the children, some of whom were battling cancer, encephalitis, and severe burns. The next stop on her list was the orphanage. The little girl and her mother visited 3 more spots filled with sick or fostered children. When all the gifts were given out, Mary looked at her daughter and said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but look, the snow has not stopped. We aren't done yet, Jenny harkened back. We don't have any more gifts to give. Mary told her, We'll need to stop at Papa's house. So that's exactly where they headed next. Jenny opened the Bible and then was told to turn to Mark 16. She did, and she began to read the verse within. What does it mean to speak with new tongues, Papa? Jenny quietly inquired. I think what Jesus wants you to do is spread the word to other people, and then maybe it will quit snowing. Jim told her, but how would people, Papa? She asked. If I were you, young lady, I would start by telling your friend. My friends don't believe in God, not like you and I, she answered. Jim was quiet the rest of the day. As Mary and Jenny drove out of sight, the girl was pondering how to convince her classmates that God is real. No matter how much she thought about it, the resolution could not come. That same evening, Jenny dreamt of a way to convince her peers. She woke up and grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down the words preached. She had a full week before she was to go back to school, so that meant plenty of time to study the Bible. She jotted down important verses that she would speak of. Furthermore, the 9-year-old practiced her speeches in front of the mirror. Moses led his people free from slavery. With all the businesses that Jenny occupied her mind with, the vacation went by fast. The first day back at school, she preached to everyone that passed her in the hallway. Some of them changed their minds concerning God and Christ, while others stood fast in their own disbeliefs. A new turned Jenny spending a whole month preaching inside the school. After a while, the students that said they were non-believers didn't quite change their perspectives, but they did begin to ask more and more questions. As their curiosities drove them mad, Jenny was smiling more at school. She felt like she'd been doing a lot of good. That first month of spreading the gospel like wildfire did not wane. In fact, it only grew with her years. Little Jenny is no longer little anymore. She is 22 years old. She is attending a Christian college as we speak. She is taking the necessary courses to become a pastor. She is to graduate in 2016. She has never forgotten about Jesus or God. As a matter of fact, her relationship with God has grown. Mary continues to work at home at age 58 years old. She is to retire at 65. Michael is no longer a part of their family. Mary and he got a divorce after 5 years. Mary started going to church again, all because of that day when Jenny was unselfish. As for Jim, he passed away a few years ago. It certainly devastated Jenny. She had lost the very influence that drove her to this positive way of living. It still snows in the winter, yet Jenny is persistent when she meets new people out on the street. She's the happiest girl in the world. The single story that her grandfather told her 12 years ago still resounds in her mind to this very day. Thank you, Papa. Say hi to Jesus for me. Jenny sits by his grave every Christmas, as does Mary. Mary is so proud of Jenny, for if it was not for the snowflakes that continue to fall, Jenny would have probably have never known our Savior like she knows today. Merry Christmas, God bless, and hope all your dreams in the new year come true. So now you know the story of the first snowflake. I hope you enjoyed reading it. Thank you.